again, it's that's kind of my mission with Total Dissonance Worship as well. We're not a traditional label. I see it more of a very collaborative community of bands that have a lot of things in common. And my idea from the moment where I said, okay, I want to put out other stuff here, I knew everything should kind of, fit in a somewhat large box. But the idea is if you like Nightmare, then probably you will like more than 50% of the other bands we put out.
Greetings, mates. Welcome to episode 182 of Into the Necrosphere. I have got a monstrous installment of the podcast on tap for you this week, starting with a hefty conversation with Simon Sludge, known to his family and friends as Simon Hawemann. He is, of course, of the band Nightmare. He also owns the record label Total Dissonance Worship, and this week he is giving me a track-by-track rundown of every single song on Nightmare's fantastic new record, Deformity Adrift. We also spoke about his journey from being a musician to a label owner, his thoughts on the current state of the music industry and where it's headed, and much, much more is coming your way very shortly. But first, Avertia is a Norwegian black metal band who are going to be releasing their new record, Midnight Returns, on the 25th of June. They have gifted me with a brand new single that I am very pleased to share with you all. It is called Light of the Dying Sun, and it is coming your way right now. You just listened to Light of Our Dying Sun by Avertia. It is taken off their upcoming record, Midnight Returns, which will drop on June the 25th. I will post a link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. Head over there, pre-order the album, tell them that old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere sent you, and support a band who is well worth your love. Speaking of something that's well worth your love, my fellow horseman of the podcast Apocalypse, every Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, the sensei, Mike Hill, brings you his long-running podcast, Everything Went Black. He returns every Thursday with his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid with Necromaniacs, my favorite podcast of the week, where they review old and classic and new horror movies. And then every Sunday, the Reverend Carl Haikara brings you the Horned Lord's message on the Good Lord's Day with his weekly podcast, Solnox. Also, make sure that you check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store if you want to buy yourself an Into the Necrosphere t-shirt or hoodie. Follow me on the socials. Make sure, if you've not already done so, that you have absolutely beaten the dog shit out of the subscribe button on your platform of choice. And then finally, stick around after my conversation with Simon, because the fun does not stop. This week, on my weekly news rant, we've got songs to listen to by BLUT AUS NORD, UNBLESSED DIVINE. Werewolves have got a new single out. TAAKE have got a new single out, and much, much more. I will also mull the topics of the day in my usually unfiltered fashion, and we will have us a grand old time. But sit back right now as I welcome to Into the Necrosphere, Mr. Simon Haverman of Nightmare.
I did not expect the amount they were charging, so...
Yeah, man. I think that's something that a lot of folks potentially don't realize about the world we live in right now. I mean, I don't know how into geopolitics you get, or how aware you are of like the fact that we've got inverse population pyramids in most major Western countries, and a lot of those older folks that are retiring. I mean, they worked they worked manual labor jobs so that their kids could go to college and go to university. But they're all now retiring. So all of the painters and the plumbers and the welders and all these guys, they're all disappearing. And anybody who's young now who I talk to and say, they ask me, what should I go and study one day? What should I go do? I'm like, become an apprentice, a plumber, or, become an electrician. You'll make money fucking hand over fist. You won't have a boss breathing down your neck. And there's going to be so few of you in 10, 20 years time. You're going to make, you'll never, ever be short of work.
Yeah, it's true. I'm originally from Berlin, Germany, and I remember when I cleaned up my apartment, I had to get I tried to get a plumber, and they were literally 4 months out.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, oh yeah, they're making money hand over fist right now. It's just good for them. But yeah, people don't want those kind of jobs. I think it's interesting, but I think right now you could definitely make a killing.
The thing is also there's less of a chance that AI is going to replace you if you if you're a plumber. Yeah. I don't see anybody saying, "Hey, bring the laptop here and stick it down the toilet." AI will sort out the rest. So
not for that reason anyway, right?
Definitely not. No. So when did you move over to Portland from Berlin?
2015.
All right, so it's been a while now.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to make the move?
My wife.
Okay, is she American?
Yes.
And she said, "There's only so many more times I can travel to Berlin Airport."
I traveled most of the time, and it was just at some point I was like, "All right, I guess this is serious. Let's move ahead."
Yeah.
And at the time, she was just starting to get on a career path, whereas mine was more flexible. I don't know, I've been a freelancer all of my life, basically. I never had a regular job where I didn't work for myself, for better or worse. But, I was flexible and I could do a lot of the stuff that I did back then here as well, So I just decided to come over here. Otherwise, maybe she would have come to Berlin. She likes Berlin a lot, and maybe one day we'll move back over.
How have you found the transition? Because Berlin is a very, very different place, I imagine, to Portland. I've been to Berlin. I've never been to Portland. I've seen quite a lot of videos about Portland, but it's. I mean, I would say they at least from my observation, they're pretty diametrically opposed.
Well, I would say, first of all, I lived in Florida for a couple of years, and I did not like that at all. The climate was not for me, extremely humid, and yeah, it wasn't necessarily my favorite place to live, but we made a decent life out there, and I always knew that I liked this corner of the country more. And while Portland brings its own set of issues with it, it gives me more big city feeling than, I mean, Tampa is not a city. I think most people, because of Tampa death metal, they think it's some sort of epicenter in Florida, but it really isn't. It's a very, very small town, really, with just miles upon miles of suburbia, basically. And the city center is a couple of skyscrapers or high-rise buildings with offices. And there's no culture downtown, zero. So yeah, it's not really much of a city vibe. Whereas here, I think Portland has 600,000 residents, I think, and it has a real city center. And if I crave a little bit of city life, again, for better or worse, I can get it. And then also the nature around here is amazing, and that's been a big payoff since we've been here. And then also, our other guitarist Keith has lived here for a long time. And our vocalist John also moved here from New York because he was ready for a change. So now, after being spread across the globe pretty much, now 3/4 of us are in Portland, and we have a US live drummer here in Portland as well. So now all of a sudden we're an actual band.
Yeah, I was about to say that would change the dynamic of the band a little bit, because are you guys rehearsing together more now, and are you playing together more now?
Yeah, absolutely. We just played some shows here in Portland and then in Seattle as well. And we're doing another show with Defeated Sanity here soon, before going to Europe this fall. So we're more flexible, and since we're pretty DIY driven, we're kind of thinking about putting together our own West Coast tour kind of thing right now. It's good to be. Everything feels very actionable right now, and that's a big difference to before, and we do enjoy that.
I mean, you must also be coming off quite a high from the reaction the Deformity Adrift has had, because I have to tell you, my friend Evan was the one who turned me onto it, and he sent me the first single when you guys released it. I was like, you have to hear this, and I was like, Jesus Christ. And then I think you saw the reaction on my news rant when I said these guys are like the North American equivalent of Ulcerate, which I mean as the biggest compliment, because I'm a massive fan of that band. But the record is just so strong and so consistently good from start to finish. It's a real statement album, I feel, in 2023, which is not easy to do because it's already a pretty crowded field, especially for bands to be able to make that kind of a powerful statement as much as what you guys have done on this album. Yeah, it's been a little bit surprising. The thing is, we left Season of Mist right before the pandemic and decided to do things ourselves going forward. After so many years in bands on established metal labels and not really ever getting a paycheck cut from a label beyond, the studio, you get your studio advance or whatever, and then that's it, and then you have to be in a lucky position to be able to tour a lot to make any scratch whatsoever. And after years of doing that, it was just we were kind of over it, and we had also learned enough over time that we felt like we would be able to apply a lot of what we learned to a self-releasing in the future. And so that's what we did, and we put out our first self-released EP in 2021, and that went pretty well. It was purely on Bandcamp, no PR, nothing. It just good timing, I guess. And now the album, the pre-order campaign went well. The feedback for the singles was good, but on release day, all of a sudden, it just kind of exploded out of nowhere. And it was just a massive day for us that we didn't necessarily see coming. We were satisfied as it was, and then all of a sudden, it's like someone pumped steroids into the entire thing. And yeah, definitely riding the high still a little bit. I was about to say, I remember your post that you put on Instagram about, you know, being really floored by the response that the record had received, and you and I spoke over release weekend as well, because we were starting. I was starting to put the wheels in motion for us to get this conversation going.
Yeah.
What is the? I guess in terms of feedback, direct messaging, and stuff like that. What are the things that you're hearing from people as they're experiencing the band? Because for a lot of people, I think this is also the first time they're actually hearing the band, or they've kind of come across your music.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I kind of distilled from the feedback is that it seems like whatever we've been trying to say with our music, for some reason, this time people kind of connected with it, right? So I felt more heard and understood by reviews as well. You know, it's like, you know, I've played music for a lot of years, and all of my bands were kind of unorthodox to a degree, and so very often people would kind of put us in the wrong, you know, category or whatever, and I always kind of felt a little bit like, okay, it's kind of hard to convey what I'm trying to do here, and this time it just people seem to just kind of click with it, and I just felt like, oh, cool. Either we got better at, you know, conveying our thing, or people just get it now, you know, and it was a good feeling for sure. And yeah, just it's interesting to hear people's like favorite songs, you know, because you always kind of have your feelings about certain things on an album, especially since we finished recording this album for the most part in early 2020 actually. And we just didn't want to release it throughout the pandemic, really. And yeah, you know, you kind of get a little bit self-conscious over time. Is it really good material? How do I feel about those songs? You know, and once we put the finishing touches and everything, I started to feel better about it again. And yeah, I guess the response, yeah, I don't know, definitely blew me away a bit.
You know, when you sort of unpick why maybe people responded to this better, or maybe what made you guys more effective as a band. When we were talking earlier about, you know, you guys kind of coming together and playing together more, when you were starting to write or record this record, had that already happened?
No, it hadn't. So it was. What's interesting is our first album took us 3.5 years to write, because our drummer and we played in a band before together, and it was somewhat similar, but not quite. So when we first started, it was kind of a challenge to reinvent ourselves without changing all of the fundamentals, so to speak. So, you know, we threw a lot of material straight in the trash, and it took such a long time to kind of unlock what we wanted to do. And then this time it took us only 3.5 weeks to write the entire album. Paul came over from Germany. He is in Berlin, Germany still. He came over to Florida right before the pandemic. We wrote about a good half, 2/3 of the album, and then right when he left, I flew over to Portland to write the rest with Keith. So it was a more spontaneous writing process. We didn't mull over everything as intensely, but rather some of these influences that we have and that are kind of interwoven in our first album, but in a more subtle manner. This time we just kind of went for it a little more, you know, and so songs like Taufbefehl, you know, where we fully lean into some industrial influences and stuff. I think stuff like that wouldn't have happened on the first album, just because we tried to homogenize everything, and this time we really didn't. We just really committed to a couple of things fully and more spontaneously than the first time around.
When you say you wanted to homogenize things on the first album, what was behind that? Is it because you wanted something, I guess, more in keeping with your original vision for the band, or did you have an idea of where you wanted to see this band fit in, I think, into the scene, and this time you sort of lost that degree of self-consciousness? I'm curious as to where that came from.
On the first album, I think we were dead set on creating a very specific atmosphere, and I think that's what happened when I say homogenizing. You know, like we kind of hit on a vibe in certain songs or moments or whatever, and then I feel like it seeped into everything else on the entire album. So I think to most people, the first album probably sounds a lot more monolithic or homogeneous, right? And this time, I think maybe there was more confidence because we felt like the vibe that we're trying to create within our music is already there. We're not a new band anymore. We kind of established the ground rules a little bit, and now we can venture outside of maybe the constraints of our first album more easily without sacrificing that vibe.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot. It's when you first see, or when you see articles written about Nightmare and they were describing the band as a technical death metal band, I almost feel like that kind of undercuts what you guys actually do, because I mean, this really is a very, very cohesive and unique blend of black metal, death metal, industrial. You've got a bunch of different stuff going on there, and like I said, you kind of give your own voice to it, which is I think partly what reminded me of Ulcerate, because I think Ulcerate's last record was very much a statement record as well, and I think I do think the extreme metal scene has almost in some ways set up and taken note of that, and a lot of bands are now kind of almost like the gauntlet is thrown down now. A lot of bands are following on from that, but there's definitely so much more going on here than just technical death metal. Do you guys do you feel, or is it annoying to get lumped into that group, or to get sort of, I guess, put into a box when you guys are significantly, I guess, removed from the box?
Well, maybe it's a little bit annoying in the sense that I do not listen to like technical death metal all that much. Whatever that really means, right? I just can't think of many influences outside of technical death metal that I could really think of, really. Yeah, I don't know. So it's a bit confusing, but that's kind of what I was touching on earlier. Where that happened to a more annoying degree, where I feel like people lumped us into kind of the wrong category a lot, and in a more dissatisfying way, I guess. The thing of it is, while I don't think we're playing technical death metal at all, I also don't think it's necessarily a bad audience for us. I think if people read those reviews and and they like technical death metal, and that's what they read in a review, and it makes them check us out, good. I don't think I think we could appeal to a lot of fans of technical death metal while not being a technical death metal band. And I'm sure as we'll put out more material, these things will become more clear, I guess, over time. So I'm not stressing over it, but it's always a little bit confusing to me. But then I have to recognize not everybody is I don't know, as anal about subgenres as I am, so it's kind of like, okay, whatever.
So did you start, because I know you've put out obviously a lot of different bands on Total Dissonance Worship, but was Total Dissonance Worship initially started with the idea of it being a vehicle to release Nightmare?
Yeah, actually the very first idea was for it to only release Nightmare. It was just supposed to kind of be our own label imprint after leaving, the larger label world. And then the pandemic hit out of, pretty much out of nowhere. And I was just kind of sitting there with this thing, and I was wondering what to do with it. And at the time, I also had a Spotify playlist also called Total Dissonance Worship. And I would just always put stuff on there that I liked, and it kind of got a pretty decent following of, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people or whatever. And what I ran into with that is a lot of the time I would, search for a band that I was a fan of, like some underground band or whatever, and they were not on Spotify. And that kind of got me thinking. I was like, well, I wonder if these bands don't want to be here, or if they don't know how to do it. And I would just start reaching out to bands and kind of ask, and it turns out a lot of them don't mind to be on there, and they just don't know how to do it. They don't want to deal with it. So I was just kind of like, well, I could help. I already know how to do it because we had just put our first single out ourselves digitally, and so I just kind of knew the ins and outs of it, and that's kind of how it started. Just helping bands get get more digital spread, and also very quickly I knew that, you know, the moment I started working with other bands, I knew I wanted to get into physical, just because I'm a big music collector. So it was kind of, yeah, it kind of happened by chance a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's been most surprising to you about getting into the business side of things? Because this was your first. Has this been your first exposure to the actual music business after leaving Season of Mist?
I mean, to that degree, for sure, because I mean, I've done plenty of DIY stuff, you know, with local bands in the past and whatnot. But then I was just, yeah, kind of in the label world with all of my bands for a long time, and where a lot of these things, you know, become, there's always someone working with or for the band in some capacity. And, you know, like my old band, there was a merchandise company that hit us up at some point. They're like, hey, we can take care of all of your merchandise, you know, and then you'll get this and that sort of cut, and you don't have to worry about packing. And everybody's like, oh, great, yeah, we should do that, you know. And so I feel like for a lot of years, outside of touring and writing and recording music, it was not a very hands-on process. So when I started Total Dissonance Worship, I feel like on one level I got more back into the DIY ethics and into the DIY game, but also with the goal of not making it necessarily. I didn't want it to feel like a local band label, so to speak, right? So I think it's kind of a mixed bag between some DIY experience, of course, and then having worked with labels and starting to understand a lot of the work that goes into it. You know, starting to look into vinyl production, realizing what a big difference there is between, you know, producing vinyl yourself and how much one copy costs versus paying your label a wholesale price for a record, like any retailer would do, you know. And you just realize, oh, okay, you know, there's different profit margins. Not that it wasn't a shock to me, but, you know, just the scale was a little bit, I don't know, was definitely a little bit.
So out of interest, I mean, without giving the game away, what is the difference in terms of profit margin? So in terms of what you would do when you're producing vinyl, and obviously, again, you know, not a lot of people have the money to be able to do that at scale, so they need a record label to be able to do it. But
right.
What's the difference in terms of you producing vinyl versus paying wholesale to a record company?
Right now, I guess the best example I could make, we pressed 1,000 copies of this album, and so I think 900 was the pressing that Seasons of Mist did, and basically I'm paying half per copy of what I would have had to pay to Seasons of Mist for a copy. And I mean, we had them press in a band exclusive color that we sold directly, and it definitely cost us twice as much. And then it had to be shipped from Europe to the US, and then from the US office to us. So I don't know, by the time it reached my doorstep and I was ready to sell it, the profit margins were, you know, pretty slim. And, you know, and it's not necessarily, it's not like we're swimming in money now, right? But it's almost kind of a matter of principle, because the thing is, I could say that before Nightmare went DIY, we were broke the entire time. Because we are not a band that's necessarily playing 130 shows a year or something, right? That's not really us. So I think the only way we could have gotten out of that is by touring a lot. But then also, you start at zero, you start as an opening band, you know. It's not like you're going to make a whole lot of money on tour either for a couple of years, and we're all a little bit older. We're not in our 20s, you know. We have lives outside of music as well, and so, you know, playing the game that way wasn't really what we felt like we wanted to do.
What do you make of some of the post-pandemic business practices that are cropping up when it comes to things like venues taking cuts of, you know, or demanding to take cuts of merchandise, and, you know, just some of the I don't know whether you call it money grubbing, but some of the flim flam, the post-pandemic fuckery that you continually hear about in the music industry?
Well, I think it's gone up, but I've dealt with it before. I've dealt with it with my old band. Like we played a couple bigger tours back in the day, and we would come, in the UK, we would come through the O2, through some of the O2 arenas. They definitely already had a merch fee, but they also had personnel, and I think, well, which also has its, its drawbacks, but like, I don't know. I think generally speaking, it's very annoying to me that as an artist that is not exactly, I don't know, making money hand over fist. It's very annoying to me that on every step of the way, there's someone who's trying to take money, and it's money off the top. It's never money out of your profits. It's like, oh, you're selling your shirt for $20. Well, 15% are going to go straight to us, and it's.
It feels like fucking like extortion. It's like the mafia telling you need to pay a protection fee. And look, I'm not a communist. I'm probably the exact opposite. But at the same time, like especially the merch cut to me, like putting myself in the shoes of a band, I would tell the label to go fuck themselves. I've said this on my news rant before. I was like, what should happen? Unfortunately, it won't happen. But what should happen is bands should just outright boycott those venues, because the principle of this is we're drawing people with our music, not with whatever you guys are doing, with our music to your venue. You're providing us a platform to play. You're making an exorbitant amount of money out of the booze that you sell at a ridiculous price, and that's that. Like your money should come from the booze money, and whatever you charge for gum in the toilets, and then the merch money is ours. And it just seems to me to be such a fucking. I almost like I'm gobsmacked at the effrontery by some of these venues to expect that from a band.
Having seen all sides of it, my wife used to work at a venue in Florida, and what's interesting is that there's always the side of the venue that just tries to do that on, as a matter of principle. They try to get a fee from you, but also it's interesting. I have talked to promoters who were straight up telling me there wasn't a merch cut until the booker of the band wanted more money and basically offered a merch cut to justify a higher fee. So then the booker all of a sudden makes a higher fee from the show, and he goes to his band and he's like, oh, by the way, I made you $200 more. But at the same point, all of a sudden there's a merch fee, and now you have to pay a merch fee to the venue, which could very well exceed $200, right? So I don't know. I think it always depends on who you're working with, but there are definitely people out there on that end, and I don't think bands are super aware that some of their booking agents are making those deals, and it kind of sucks, because it means that, for $200 more, the booking agent makes $20 more off of his commission, right? But the band may lose hundreds upon hundreds of dollars on the merch table. So I don't know, it's kind of a shit show, and yeah, I haven't firsthand dealt with merch cuts in a long time, just simply because with Nightmare we only did one tour in 2019, and now we're kind of getting back into it. But yeah, I don't know. It's all of these reasons, kind of contribute to us wanting to do as much as we can ourselves and kind of have that control over at least over the music, which arguably is the one main thing that every band does. Like my product, quote unquote, isn't being like a performer. I'm a musician. I'm an artist who writes something and then records it and puts it out. And I think taking control over that is, I guess, the most fundamental thing, where I at least know I can do something and also make some money out of it, or at least make the amount of money out of it to keep the band afloat without having to necessarily tour, whether or not we want to. But yeah, I guess, the long short of it is, the more you can, control, I guess, the better.
And so the way that you work with your bands on Total Dissonance Worship, have you employed some of those same principles and some of those same ideas with the way that you treat the guys that are on your roster?
Yes, yeah, I'm basically trying not to do any of the things that I experienced while I was, signed to labels. And, the difference is, of course, I don't have big PR budgets, and which doesn't mean that I haven't booked PR for some of my releases, but generally speaking, I'm always very transparent with my bands. The profits are always split down the middle, or actually to a little bit of the advantage to the band, and then I'm just trying to be, it's more of a collaborative working situation sometimes, right? Because sometimes, for example, I will talk to a band and they definitely want to press something on vinyl, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of the reality of it. How much do you want for the band? And then if they want enough for the band, I could basically see if I can double that up and we can split the pressing or something, right? There's a lot of flexibility. It always kind of depends on the band, depends on how active they are, what they want for themselves, and then we take it from there basically. But I'm trying to do, I don't charge wholesale to my bands, for example. When a band orders something from me that I pressed for them, it's at cost, right? So yeah, I'm always trying to kind of, yeah, I don't know, just do the things that I wish people would have done for my band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you see a lot of because I've commented on this before, and you seem to notice an awful lot of bands announcing that they're breaking up, and it's like bands you barely heard of. It's deep underground bands. You would assume they're not selling more than 2,000 to 3,000 copies of a record, if that.
Yeah.
Their Spotify presence is reasonably small, so is their social presence. But they're announcing their breakup. Would you say that it's because of some of these practices in the music industry that's kind of pushing those bands out?
I think it can be a big bummer, right? And looping back to the pandemic, I felt extremely lucky that I got out of a label situation because, like I said, we were already broke before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, especially when touring was just not an option, all bands out there who have regular ass label deals basically had nothing to make money off of. Of course, you can do a merch drop, but there has to be a good reason for you to put out merch, right? You either have to have a new album release or it has to be a tour. You have to be, I think, at a certain level where people will just buy your merch because, hey, here's new merch. So, that was like, I think a lot of bands were put in a position for 2 years and beyond, where they couldn't monetize anything. And so if they were committed to try and really build their bands up and try to be more or less a full-time band, it must have been dire. And I'm sure that bands broke because of that, and yeah, I think, I just think generally speaking, it can be very tedious to talk to labels. It can be tedious to agree on things, to agree on things that fit your vision and that also fit what a label's willing to do for you. And I think it's, I think a lot of illusions are definitely shattered in the process. Yeah.
Have you ever experienced pressure from a label or I guess, constructive but mandatory input from a label on the direction that you've taken on a record, or has a label ever kind of said, listen, we're not quite sure about track 8 and 9, maybe you want to replace them with something else?
I have not, to be honest. I know from people who have. I guess, I don't know, maybe my bands weren't big enough cash cows to warrant that kind of
that degree of intervention.
Yeah, I'm sure once there are higher 5-figure production advances and producers are hired to help with the songwriting and whatnot, I'm sure once you kind of enter that realm, it looks a bit different. But yeah, I've heard it from people who have canned albums even in really drastic cases. But yeah, I guess it's probably like a money bracket kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about PR and about raising bands' profiles and stuff like that, what do you think is the future for smaller bands in the underground? Because again, I think if I'm reading you correctly, and I happen to agree with this, I think DIY is definitely the way to go. I think there are benefits to being on a label, but I feel like with the tools that are now available to you, as long as you're organized and you know what you're doing, a lot of what the label can do for you is starting to kind of wither away. And then frankly, if you need PR, there are a number of very, very capable independent PR consultants that you can employ to do it for you. But so what from your perspective as a band at Nightmare's level, or maybe some of the bands that you deal with on your label, what is the future for, or the best course of action if you were advising a new band today? These are the 3-4 things I would make sure I do right from the very start to get my name and my music out. What would you suggest to them?
Well, I think it always depends a little bit on what you want to do. But I think the first thing that people have to understand, or just really get some sort of basic understanding of, is there's always been that the cliche of, if you're not going to make money off of your music, only if you go tour will you be able to monetize music in any way, shape, or form. And that's just not true. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying you're going to swim in money, but it makes a big difference for a smaller band, especially if you can, if you can even sell 1,000 copies of something, do the math. Look how much a record costs, find out how much it costs to produce them. It becomes clear that you'll all of a sudden have band in your bank account, money in your bank account, if you're able to do that, but it's also difficult, I think it's difficult to start, right? It's difficult to start because if you're starting from nowhere, if you're a brand new band, I guess the first best thing you should do is find similar bands and start something with them. Community building, collaborations. Yeah, I think that's kind of the way of the future, and that's kind of I said this earlier, but it's, if you can collaborate on stuff with other bands, you can create your own labels. I think the more you curate, the better. So people kind of know what they get. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. You have to play to your strengths and just find out what you can do on your own, and then just build and hustle, kind of. That's, at the end of the day, that's the main thing. You have to be able and willing to put in the time. But if you're hoping to get a career in touring, I don't know, talk to labels. I don't know. It's hard for me to give a really specific answer on that, because it seems like everybody's priorities are very, very different. And just for me, I could say, if you're in a position where you do want to have a lot of control over your output, over when you put something out, how, on, in what kind of format, and if you want some of that money to land back in your pockets, then try and figure out a way to do it yourself. And if you're not that concerned with it and all you want to do is tour, then talk to a label.
Yeah, the thing is also the touring game for a lot of bands. I think a lot of folks also don't realize how much of a zero-sum game that is.
Yeah.
And not only is it a zero-sum game, but I don't know how old you are. I'm 43 years old. I spoke to somebody about this a while back.
Yeah,
I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid now about my retirement.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks don't realize. If you're in bands and you're playing live and stuff like that, until you're in your mid to late 50s, there's no retirement fund unless you self-creating one and then paying money into it.
Yeah.
And it's also it's a lifestyle of abuse. You're cramped into a small van. The diet isn't the most healthy, generally speaking.
Yeah.
It's not something that's conducive to a long and happy life in your golden years. But yeah, that's just kind of a side observation. But you touched on something I think that is very important, and I see it becoming more and more important, and that's community. I think I even see it with my podcast. Like, I've built a community, firstly, of fellow podcasters. So, the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's something that it was started in the pandemic. It grew very organically. But what I've definitely noticed now as well is there's kind of a number of bands that kind of orbit around the community, and you start to notice that the people that are following you on social media are automatically following them. And for me, what was a personal victory for me, so to speak, when the Antichrist Imperium put out their record last year, I really pushed it very heavily on the podcast, and the guys from Apocalyptic Witchcraft said to me, like, we saw a better return from your podcast than we saw from the Decibel ad campaign that we ran. And so I think that's an interesting case study, because, as I said, it shows that if you can build that community correctly, and you can get the right, naturally, again, from a podcasting perspective, you'll have those bands kind of orbiting that community. Hopefully, that also helps those bands, right? Almost by association. And that's always been, I've said this many times on the show, it's always been my main goal. Is I wanted to get the podcast to a point where I can take a band whose music I really like and I really believe in, and I can move the needle for them. Even if it's getting just 50 people to buy this stuff, because those 50 people hopefully will turn on another 50 people, maybe another 100 people onto their stuff. And so if I can move the needle for a small band that I like, whether they're signed or unsigned, that's the stated goal of the show. And again, I think in some ways that almost kind of harkens back to the old days of the scene, right? You were talking about the Tampa Bay death metal scene. I would say, it takes me back to, like, when I was young, getting into this music, and it's tape trading, and it's, this band, and, we were leafing through catalogs. So we used to get the Nuclear Blast catalog in South Africa, where I grew up, and we're trying to figure out what the German means in the catalog. Well, this band sounds cool because it says black metal, and at one point it says Satan. So this must be great. So it's like, right. It's like that, but that's kind of the excitement of it. And again, I've always complained about the fact that my daughter will never get to experience the excitement of waiting 3 months for a CD to arrive from overseas. But there's, maybe there's a different kind of excitement, and maybe the excitement, the key to that, I guess, that fulfillment and that satisfaction sits within the community that we just spoke about now.
I think so. And, again, that's kind of my mission with Total Dissonance Worship as well. We're not a traditional label. I see it more of a very collaborative community of bands that have a lot of things in common. And my idea from the moment where I said, okay, I want to put out other stuff here, I knew everything should kind of, fit in a somewhat large box. But the idea is, if you like Nightmare, then probably you will like more than 50% of the other bands we put out, and my favorite, since I see the orders when they come in, right? And my favorite orders are when someone grabs a little bit of everything, right? It's cool when someone buys 3 different vinyl colors of Nightmare, but it's more cool when someone buys Nightmare and then, Choir and Carcinoma or something, right? And I see that, and I'm just like, on one hand, I feel an immediate connection as a fan, because I would have done the same thing, right? Or I see it's 3 bands that I love as a fan, and I'm just stoked about that part, right? So yeah, it's a big part of why the label is the way it is too. And and also, I knew from the get-go it wouldn't hurt for Nightmare either, to pool this community of similar music around the band. That's not a bad thing. So yeah.
So let's talk a little about Deformity Adrift, because as I mentioned before, statement record of 2023, it is absolutely sensational, and it's everything about it is sensational, including the artwork, which it's really kind of abstract and very unique in the scene. Who did it for you?
So the person who did it is John, under the name, I'm trying to think if they had a moniker for their artwork. I don't think so. So John, I've worked with John a couple of times. They did the artwork for our previous EP and helped with some music actually for my old band's last album. And what happened with this album artwork was I just happened to stumble over their Facebook page, and this piece of artwork was for sale in 2018.
Oh, wow.
So it's the first time in my life where I didn't fully commission an artwork based on our own ideas. I saw it and I showed it to my bandmates at the time, and all of us immediately connected with it. It was just like, we need this artwork, right? And then at first it was supposed to be artwork for an EP, and then we kind of felt like it was too good for an EP, and we had John make a companion piece for the EP, which is somewhat similar art, just way darker. So yeah, it was purely by chance. Probably never going to happen this way again, where I just see something that speaks to me on that level. But immediately I was just blown away.
What was it about the piece that spoke to you?
I think mostly the contorted figure of the cover. Our lyrics are there's a lot of like torturous self-loathing, and at the same time, I just talked about this to our vocalist, where there's a lot of self-loathing in our lyrics, but also kind of a triumphant nature of not letting self-loathing control you. You know what I mean? So this contorted figure just kind of was a really good representation, I guess, of that. And yeah, and very simple stuff, just the coloring, very different, not usually a color spectrum I would seek out, but I think the combination of everything, and it also kind of put themes in my head a little bit, lyrical themes, musical themes, and we actually ended up writing some musical parts that were somewhat inspired by the cover imagery. So it was all like kind of in reverse. Usually, you base your artwork commissions off of lyrics or whatever, right? And this time around, it was kind of like we already had the art piece, and it inspired us to do some musical stuff.
And so you'd seen the cover before you actually wrote some of the songs?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay, that's. I mean, that as you say, that's kind of the reverse of what you typically do. You write the record, and then you go, okay, album's done. Let's get a cover. 5 pentagrams, several inverted crosses, naked women. Right. That's the cover. If you're impaled Nazarene. So let's do a quick track by track of this record, because it's one of the things that I love so much about the album is the flow. And I've often criticized bands for doing what feels like they're just kind of tossing tracks onto a CD, and they're not really thinking about the sequencing of the record, and the record doesn't seem to have kind of a natural rhythm of its own. Yeah. And I always find the best albums are the ones where it feels like a journey from end to end. This is a great example of that. I mentioned Ulcerate, Exuvia by Ruins of Everest. It feels like you've gone through a spiritual odyssey when you listen to that record. But if we start with Brutalist Imperator, which is the first track, talk to me a little bit about the song. Ideas, themes, what you were wanting to convey on that song.
So that was one of the songs that I wrote with Keith. So it was the second writing session for the album. And the thing of it is that our drummer Paul and we have written music together for so many years, and when Keith joined the band, it was very interesting because he has worked as a solo artist for most of his career, and it's mostly instrumental music. And he also likes a lot of first of all, he has a more traditional death metal background than even most of his solo work. He has an old death metal band called Demisery, just very brutal stuff, American death metal. And for that song, I feel like we leaned into those death metal influences a little more. The main verse riff after the intro is a very, for us, it's a very traditional death metal kind of feel. And it was just something that at the time when we started writing this song was missing. And then the thing with Keith is too, since he has been a solo artist for most of his life, I always think in two guitars. When I write a song, sometimes hearing just one guitar of what I write makes zero sense. If you just heard one isolated guitar, it would just sound stupid or random. And because I always already think in the second layer is already kind of there. I already kind of know where I want to go with it. Keith, on the other hand, writes a lot. He achieves a similar effect just writing with one guitar, because that's what he has done most of his life, just writing instrumental music and not separating it out into a band setting necessarily in his head. So I think that's part of the interesting thing that happened with the songs that we wrote together, because sometimes what happens is it almost creates this thing where the guitar lines that Keith writes already almost give a full band effect, because that's what he always tried to achieve, at least I guess, as a solo musician. And then when I layer something over it, it becomes sometimes it almost sounds like three guitars are doing something at the same time, just because there's that much, I guess, information between the chords and intervals. So yeah, I think, as a baseline, that is an interesting thing that happens when him and I write songs. And for that particular song, we just really leaned into, we wanted to do something very straightforward and death metal, at least, as far as Nightmare is concerned.
What was your background in terms of music? Like, what was the stuff that you were into the most, and that kind of that sparked this idea to start writing music and become a musician?
So what made me want to be a guitarist very early on was Fear Factory. Hearing the mechanical guitar play, right? So you were mentioning you didn't know how old I was. I'm 38, so I grew up with 90s metal. And Fear Factory, when I heard that for the first time, and I heard the syncopated playing between the guitar and the drums, that was completely new to me, and that kind of made me oh, I want to do this, And then, but the most influential stuff for me in, I would say the most influential phase, because of my age, was kind of the early 2000s, and there was a lot of chaotic, grindcore, chaotic hardcore too. So stuff like old Dillinger Escape Plan, Botch, old Converge, Coalesce. So all of the weird outside of the box kind of scrunky hardcore stuff. And at some point that kind of died. And I remember when I started my old band, someone told me, hey, this reminds me of Gorguts. And so I checked Gorguts out, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is kind of the death metal, it's kind of like a similar thing that I like, but it's more in the death metal realm. And then I started exploring the metal end of chaotic and dissonant and extreme music. But yeah, I was into cephalic carnage and stuff like that. A lot of grindcore, but also, yeah, really a lot of hardcore punk even.
Yeah, which is very interesting. When you mention the Fear Factory influence, I can hear it in the music now.
Yeah,
I would never in a million years have pegged it had you not mentioned it.
Right.
I mean, I must confess, when it comes to Fear Factory, I still like Soul of a New Machine.
Yes, great album.
I don't know why. I used to love the Manufacturer a lot, but I'm starting to even go off that a little bit. But I've started to go off pretty much everything from Obsolete onwards, mostly because I find Burton's lyrics to be completely and utterly cringeworthy, and as I get older, my tolerance for that gets less and less and less. Which is also probably hypocritical to say, because I'll sit here and laugh my head off at Impaled Nazarene singing, Pledge Allegiance to Satan, but it's but then it's I don't know, it's just something about it. But again, I can definitely pick it up now. And then Converge is also an interesting one, because Converge has some incredibly dark songs.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned it now, I can absolutely see that applied to what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
As far as Dillinger Escape Plan is concerned, I mean, I love the fact that they were so creatively open and did so many different things. You could get a song where there's moments on some of the I mean, like you think about Black Bubblegum. I mean, there's a part of Black Bubblegum that literally sounds like Justin Timberlake with metal guitars, and it's fucking brilliant. They pull it off brilliantly,
right.
And to me, that's just awesome. I think Greg, especially Greg Puciato, his whole attitude of I'll do whatever the fuck I want and no one's going to tell me otherwise. I love it. I love people like that. I've always been drawn to edgy characters that are like that, which is maybe because I grew up watching professional wrestling. So.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You grow up watching Stone Cold and you end up with a certain mindset.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, a lot of that time for me was extremely formative because, in that weird murky space between hardcore and grindcore, there was a lot of bands that were really pushing the envelope and making really unorthodox stuff. And yeah, it really spoke to me. It's funny too with Converge, for example. I remember, now they're almost like the poster hardcore band for most people. But I remember a time when I was more involved in Berlin in the hardcore scene. I remember a lot of people were just like, "Oh, Converge, that's too fucking annoying. I can't listen to that." So yeah, it's interesting to see how that all of that has developed. But yeah, like everything I listened to was always a little bit too annoying for most of my people who are on the periphery of the same music scene. And I kind of, and I feel like I latched onto the same thing with metal, because I'm sure a lot of people who like extreme metal still can't listen to a lot of dissonant metal, because maybe that's where they really start disconnecting. Once there's like an atonal rub between notes, I feel like for some people everything kind of falls apart at that point.
But I would say with Nightmare, though, there's so many like really great epic melodies. You just you're not following the typical Iron Maiden scale when you're writing melodies, which again I don't like Iron Maiden, so or at least I shouldn't say I don't like them, but I'm not a fan of particularly the typical Iron Maiden type melody that so many bands employ.
Right.
But you guys have those very, very dark, like almost cinematic melodies. And like on a song like Baptismal Tomb, which is the next one that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
That's a song that's so unbelievably brutal, but it has those little flares of melody that come through, and it makes it a very, very memorable track. Mm-hmm. Is that where does the melodic side of what you guys do come from? Because on its face, it sounds like you guys listen to a lot of black metal, which I wouldn't, mm-hmm. which wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But you've now thrown some real left field stuff in here, like Converge, Dillinger Escape Plan. So I'm now more curious to know.
Right, and it's funny because that song in particular, is one of our more chaotic tunes. So I feel like it almost has a little bit more of my old influences in that sense, where it's just kind of like this eruptive, chaotic nature to it. When it comes to melody, black metal is a big deal for sure. All of us in the band listen to a lot of black metal, and I think that sense of wanting to create an atmosphere, it still trumps, like, I don't want to be dissonant just for the sake of it, and sometimes there are definitely bands that I feel like, okay, this is just kind of starting to go into a noise territory, there's some interesting microtonal metal, but I can't fully get into it. It's starting to become a little bit too convoluted for me. But I want to use dissonance to create almost a feeling of emotional tension, I guess, right? To put you kind of in an uncomfortable spot, but it's not supposed to be torture at the same time, right? So yeah, I think that's really it. I think at the end of the day, our biggest interest is to always create an atmosphere, and so a certain amount of melody, I guess, is necessary. And most of them aren't beautiful melodies, right? Like you said, they're dark and they are still tense. But I guess for those more melodic melodies, we dial back, I guess, the dissonance just a little bit, And then, yeah.
Well, you have a lot of tools in your toolbox, and you deploy them. You deploy them at the right time. I think it's always, if you only have one, if you only have one trick, if you only have one thing that you can do really, really well, people see through it, and it gets boring pretty quickly, and it ends up with the music lacking depth. You might hear it for the first time and go, yeah, this is very, very cool, and then the more you listen to it, the more it kind of just sort of okay, well, now it's not really doing much for me anymore. Another band you mentioned, Cephalic Carnage. I mean, talk about a band who were kind of creatively just pushing the envelope into all sorts of crazy different directions. I mean, I remember seeing them live, and you'll go from this crazy grindcore to a song like "Dying Will Be the Death of Me," which is crazy grindcore, and all of a sudden it has this fucking epic, motorcycle rock 80s metal chorus that comes out. It's just killer, and live especially it works so well. And then right after they've hit you with a chorus, we're into like Meshuggah, like Chug territory.
Right.
But yeah, I think the best of the best musicians are musicians that know when they should deploy what tool. And like when it comes to dissonance, for example, just deploying it for the sake of deploying it becomes redundant.
Right.
When you're throwing it at somebody at the right time, it's that's when it has that real impact. And I think again, you guys have really, really nailed it on this record.
I appreciate that.
So next up, we've got Throw of Illicit Withdrawal.
We do. That song was an interesting experiment. So I have to loop back to our previous EP, Monolith of Corrosion, a little bit. On that EP, we wrote 3 songs, and the whole purpose was to descend in guitar tuning and tempo. So the first song was, which is Baptismal Tomb, but not in the same tuning as on the album. The first song was in a 6-string guitar tuning, basically just a half step down from standard, very chaotic, like we just talked about. The second song was kind of a mid-tempo song, more black metal influences, and it was tuned as if we were playing a 7-string guitar. And then the last song was a doom song, and it also made it on the album Obliterated Shrine, which was, very slow and crawling, and the tuning was even lower. We were now entering Meshuggah territory, guitar tuning, right? So what happened when we wrote that EP was, because we put limits on what we could do with every song, limiting yourself to something, to not the full scope of your instrument, now makes you, it forces you to be creative just in a smaller space, and it makes you think differently because you don't end up, playing the same thing over and over again. So when we wrote the album, I kind of wanted to go back to that a little bit and throw myself for a loop. And so what we did was, again, we started writing the song as if it wasn't in our normal guitar tuning. And so I think the only part where we go back into our regular tuning is that slow industrial doom part towards the later third of the song. But yeah, it just ended up becoming a more melodic song. And we realized after a while, I think right around the time we put the album sequencing together, we realized hilariously how traditional the structure of that song is. You have a little intro, you have a verse, you have a chorus, you have a bridge, and you have a chorus. It's almost pop music, and that was not at all planned. And it's ridiculous to say that within the context of this music, but sometimes it's funny when you were bringing up the sequencing as being very important, and I agree with that. And so when we started working on the sequencing, I started just analyzing everything about every song and just kind of went down this rabbit hole. And that's when I noticed that this song happened to be just an accidentally very commercial structuring at the very least. Yeah.
But the thing about that is it adds dynamics to the album, right? If you have 8 songs of just pure chaos and carnage, I mean, again, it's like, I remember. So Hate Eternal, when they did, what was the album called? It was the one that they did right after Jared Anderson passed away. And I know Eric Rutan dedicated it to him. Fury and Flames.
Oh, yes.
I think it's called. And Fury and Flames, like, you listen to the first two songs, it's great, and then the rest of the album, you kind of like, Jesus, okay, like, we get you can play fast, and we get you can do chaos really, really well, but it's kind of starting to it's kind of outlasted its welcome. And then on Phoenix Amongst the Ashes, which is the next one that they did, they're going right back to more traditional songwriting structures and stuff like that. And they still have a lot of the same chaos from Fury and Flames, but the songs are much more grounded now. So you always have kind of a beacon on every single track. You always have that. You never feel like you've lost your way. Like, what am I actually listening to here?
Right.
And I think it's critical to have moments like throes of illicit withdrawal, because again, it helps kind of center you. It sort of keeps you where you you feel like the album hasn't lost you, if that makes sense.
And I think especially after a song like Baptismal Tomb, which is very blasty, it's so I think with the slightly more accessible structuring of the song, and and it being a little bit more melodic, I think it's a very good contrast with Baptismal Tomb, and really serves the songwriting and the album experience.
So next up, you've got the first of two instrumentals, Tombs. We can both actually discuss both. So Tombs and End Stadium are the two instrumentals that you have. Yeah. And again, I love them because it's more of that, what I spoke about. It's more of the dynamics. It's more of the journey. It's more of setting that tone and that atmosphere for, okay, well, what's going to come next? It elevates the record to make it feel almost cinematic, rather than just an album that's 8 songs and they're all doing kind of the same thing. Yeah. Where are you a fan of film scores or of classical music? Where did the idea for those instrumentals come from?
So the Tombs was written by our drummer Paul, who also plays piano, and yeah, he's kind of a multi-instrumentalist and dabbles in other music too. He also plays for this band The Ocean, which is very different from Nightmare, yeah. And then he has a solo project too, which is basically dark electronic pop music in a way. So he does a little bit of everything, and so it's interesting when I started getting into dissonant extreme metal, especially dissonant black metal, dissonant death metal. I just realized that there was a lot of classical music out there that that already employed a lot of dissonance, and on the guitar, when you start learning to play the guitar, a guitar teacher will tell you a dissonant interval is just wrong, basically. But then you hear a piano piece, a classical piece, and it is used as part of acceptable composition, and so I remember there's a piece by Alfred Schnittke, and it's called Concerto for Piano and Strings, which is mostly centered around piano. And and I always felt like the piano is one of the best sounding instruments when you use dissonance. The notes are ringing so clear, with like such attack. They're very bright and chimey or whatever. So piano is an instrument where you could also really hear the separation of the dissonant notes. Like on a distorted guitar, it can be hard to kind of piece together, what the notes are that create the dissonance. On a piano, it's almost easy in comparison. So, so that was a big influence actually for me to transfer that stuff to guitar, and just, being like, well, if people can do it on the piano, I can do it on the guitar. It's not wrong. I can do whatever I want, right? And but also it always stuck with me. I always liked the tonality of a piano, and so Paul and I at some point built this distorted piano sound, and we use it throughout the record in more subtle ways. Sometimes it appears just a cluster of notes on like a drum hit or something, and it just adds to the dissonance of like an open guitar string or whatever. But yeah, we liked the tone of that so much that we were like, okay, let's make a whole interlude out of it, and let's use some of the notes that are in the next song Suffering Beyond Death, and built them into the piece to just, you know, build, you know, a subtle, I guess, transition into it. And yeah, that's kind of the story behind that one.
And Suffering Beyond Death is definitely kind of one of the center point songs of the record. Like it's, you know, every great record has those anchor songs, you know, the song that's kind of like, this is, if you had to select a song that defines the record, this is the one you'd be listening to. For me, definitely as a listener, Suffering Beyond Death is that track. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Also a song I wrote together with Keith. And, you know, with Keith, it was interesting too. The first time we wrote a song together, it took us 4 hours and we had a whole song. This one took a little bit longer, but the process was it's just very interesting because, you know, Keith has his ideas, I have my ideas. And for some reason, I mean, it definitely didn't take us longer than a day to write it. It took us a couple hours to, you know, write the skeleton of the song. And yeah, I remember moments this like chuggy fast with the right, you know, like I remember just wanting to have like a traditional, almost thrashy groove to it, and I was just sitting there, you know, like trying to build something out of the riffs we already had, you know, the dissonant, blasty bits, and trying to infuse it with a different dynamic. And yeah, I don't know, it was a very natural process. We wrote it really fast, and it just felt right from the get-go. And I think the clean part, I think Keith had already written that at some point. And while we were writing the song, he was just like, wait a minute, I have this part here. And we put it right there and it immediately fit. And also what you hear on the record is his first take of the demo, because he could never reproduce the atmosphere of that part when he was trying to play it more cleanly again, right? So we basically used a demo guitar recording part for the album just because it sounded right and organic. Yeah.
The sound of the record, I have to say, I mean, I was talking to another friend of mine the other day. He sent me a copy of his CD, and I've got a streamer that I can rip it into, and the streamer will put it in completely lossless, uncompressed.
Yeah.
And I was saying to him, like I you know, generally speaking, I've got a pretty decent hi-fi setup, so I'll listen to a lot of new music on there. A lot of newer releases. The one gripe that I will have with them is that they sound quite compressed, and you know, you can listen to them on a 100,000 pound sound system, and they will sound like trash.
Yeah.
You guys sound fantastic. Like, it's a very big open sound. It's got an airy sound, and it's something that kind of fills the room, you know, if you're listening to it on decent on a decent setup. How did the recording of the record work? Were you guys, we're talking about DIY, but did you guys do the mixing and the mastering yourselves?
Not on this one. We did the mixing and the mastering on our previous EP, where we went in a much more raw and organic direction. And for the album, we worked with the same engineer who mixed and mastered our first album. His name is Raphael Beauvais. He's in Switzerland. And before we recorded our first album, he was recommended to me by a friend. And there were two things that I listened to that he had mixed and mastered. And one was a Gojira live recording. They once did for Arte or whatever, that TV network. Yeah. They did like an exclusive live thing, a club show, and he did the audio mix for that, and it sounded phenomenal. And the other thing, the friend who recommended them at the time played in a drone band that didn't have a drummer, and somehow the recording sounded massive. And I was like, okay, so you have someone who is extremely capable mixing a live recording and make it sound huge and, you know, amazing. And then he also is capable of making a recording without drums sound crushing. And so I was just like, okay, clearly with very challenging ideas and concepts, he is capable of creating something really good. And yeah, when we first approached him, I was extremely, I was heavily into Shape of Despair's Monotony Fields, because, you know, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of funeral doom bands don't necessarily sound very polished, you know, and they kind of had this album had this production that just sounded huge, you know, but not in a bad way. It wasn't like sterile sounding, or I didn't feel like it was overproduced. It just sounded kind of like in a cave without sounding shitty, you know, or mushy. And yeah, that's kind of how we went to him. I was like, hey, listen, I recognize we have a lot of fast parts in our music, but we also really like roomy productions, you know, like that's kind of something we lean towards. And he's like, yeah, that's challenging, but I'll try. And then our first album, he nailed the mix within, I think his first test mix was basically 99% there, and just micro tweaks from there. This one took a little bit longer. The production was very patchworky. Some guitars were recorded at my old studio in Florida, some here in Portland at Keith's studio. Drums were recorded in Berlin. Bass were recorded by Brenton of Convulsing in Australia in his home studio. So getting everything together into one session, into one, you know, like, on Keith's computer, we tried to fuse everything on his recording program, and it was a lot of work trying to make everything fit. And then it was also, because of that, I think it was a bigger challenge for Raphael to work with. But we kind of went at him with the same want. We wanted it to be big and open and roomy and cavernous, but not in a messy way. And yeah, I think that's probably an unorthodox ask. And yeah, luckily he's that talented that he can make it work. But it took a little bit longer this time. It took a couple of extra tweaks. Yeah.
So next you've got Tauf Befehl. I don't know if I'm sure I've mispronounced it, but that has got there's a biblical reference there, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, sort of. Actually, I thought the word was a creation that I just made up. You know, it's kind of, so basically it was inspired by fusing the German word for shooting orders and baptizing, right? So it's like baptizing orders. But I remember I think when we put out the single, someone was making fun of the title. Someone, you know, the German person was making fun of the title. Like, what the fuck's that supposed to mean? You know, kind of laughing at it. And a friend of mine just told me, oh, that the term actually exists. You know, like and apparently it's there are religious groups that make it their, you know, part of their mission is to make people get baptized. You know, like it's like a cornerstone of their mission, and the word Taufbefehl actually is kind of part of that. So yeah, it was very interesting. But that was not at all the inspiration. The inspiration for the song it has a lot to do with the two guys who also featured vocals on the song, Jan and Christian from Valborg, who are one of my like favorite German metal bands. I think they're extremely underrated band, you know. And I've known Christian for a lot of years, and they have always used very primitive German language for their lyrics and their song titles, and it's like, it's so primitive, sometimes it's genius, right? It's just like, I don't know, I think they're very I think the label they're on at some point coined the term sophisticated primitivism, and I was like, yep, that's it. That's exactly 100% correct. And so they're a big influence on me and good friends, and I knew I wanted to do a collaborative song with them. And so musically we leaned into that a little bit more, into the more primitive, you know, song structure. And yeah, and I let Christian write all of the lyrics. Even the English lyrics are translated from German, actually. So we were like, I was just like, please do your thing, whatever inspires you, you know. This is the song title, just run with it.
Next, you've got Hammer of Desolation, which is kind of the last blast before that next anchor moment for me, which we'll get to in a second. But talk to me a little bit about Hammer of Desolation.
A song I think I started writing with Keith all the way back in 2019, and I just started over with Paul when he was visiting me for songwriting in early 2020. You know, it's interesting. I think I don't really think we really had this mission, but when the song was done and when I hear it now, it's almost like the knucklehead song of the album, right? It's just a fun banger kind of, and you know what? Why not, right? It's very fun to play. It's very fun to play live. It has a lot of impact, and yeah, something we haven't done in a while is the outro of the song. You know, that kind of Meshuggah-ish kind of vibe and dynamic. I feel like I used to do that a little bit more. There's maybe a little bit more like that on our first album, but yeah, honestly, I think the songwriting just kind of flowed. It was a very spontaneous process. There wasn't a lot of. It's sometimes like one part just kind of leads to the next, and that's kind of what happened with this song. It wasn't one of those things where like Taufbefehl, where we had an extremely clear mission of what we wanted to achieve. And most of the time, I feel like that leads to more special songs. With this song, it was just a very natural process of writing.
With how chaotic your music is, and with how low you tune on a lot of your songs, how difficult is it for you to play that live or to recreate that live?
I guess that kind of brings us back to the tech metal question. A lot of it isn't super technical to play. It's weird to play because, yeah, a lot of the time when I write songs, I just kind of try to write or record what's in my head, kind of, it all kind of plays in my head. I hear something, I'm like, okay, let me try this. And I don't really pay mind to how it plays that much. And then comes the time where you have to play it. And, when Keith started learning a lot of our set for the shows we played recently, it was kind of the same thing. He was like, it's not hard to play, but it's so fucking weird. And, my hands sometimes don't want to do it because it just does not feel natural. So I think the thing is too, though, I'm not classically trained guitarist at all. I did take some lessons. I quickly noticed it's not for me. And I'm the kind of guitarist who always just writes what he wants to hear. I can't shred. I can almost do nothing but Nightmare, right? It's kind of like a tunnel vision thing for me. So for me, I guess if I write something that I can't play yet, I'll have to learn how to play it, and for better or worse. Sometimes there are moments where stuff is just not playable live, and we won't. I mean, it definitely happened. Yeah.
How do folks respond to you live? Because obviously I've never seen you guys play live, but it's. Do you get a lot of energy, or do people kind of stare at you, not quite knowing what to make of what they're hearing?
It's a little bit of both. The shows we just played were really good. People were extremely enthusiastic. But I'm also kind of in my zone a little bit. I don't really, and our stage lighting is pretty dark. We always have the room lights turned off, and we just have some light bars in front of our amps, and we use a lot of smoke. So it's a fog. It's just, not, I don't necessarily count that much on like audience interaction. But yeah, I remember when we toured in 2019, in Alabama, of all places, people were going nuts, and it was almost felt like more like as if we were, Cannibal Corpse or something, people were just kind of like going wild, and that was very interesting. One of the few times where I noticed that kind of behavior. But yeah, a lot of the times I think people, I guess the ideal scenario for us is people latching onto the atmosphere and the heaviness. And, you know, sometimes like with people who are very, very close up front, you sometimes see them respond, like their facial expressions respond to the heaviness of certain parts. And that's always funny to see, you know. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, but yeah, I don't know, can't really define it that well because of how dark everything is and how, I don't know, we don't barely say anything when we play.
You're not saying, all right, guys, light us up for this one. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Hold your girl close.
Yeah, there's not really stage banter. Very rarely will a vocalist say anything, you know. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, it's kind of it's a very particular experience, I guess, and people either feel that or they don't.
So you close the record. Obviously, we've got End Stadium. We've spoken about that already, but you close the record with kind of this cliffhanger track. It's another of those anchor songs, but it very much feels like a cliffhanger. I think the interesting thing also is the last lyrics on the song. But before we talk about that, tell me a bit about this tune.
So, as I mentioned earlier, was the final part of our EP that we wrote before the album, or within kind of the writing session of the album. And when we had finished it, when the EP was done, you know, we purposefully went with a very raw and dry production, and we felt like the song kind of had a different potential still. And so for the album version, we actually invited my friend Jesse Zuretti, who is a composer. He does he does soundtrack stuff for Marvel, and I don't know, he's video games. It's pretty wild, but he's a metal guy. And at some point, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, if you ever need any help, you know, with something, you know, just hit me up." And I was like, "Actually, you know, we have the song here." And so I kind of asked him to work his magic a little bit, and he built some industrial percussion type elements, but also some like horns that are interwoven with the riffs. It's kind of hard to sometimes separate them from the guitars, and that was kind of part of it. We kind of wanted it to be, you know, kind of make you be like, what am I actually hearing?
A wall of sound.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we wanted to almost make the last song feel like a climax, you know, and push it into almost overproduced territory, you know, like where it just everything is kind of escalating to a certain point. And yeah, in that sense, it's very different than the EP version, which was much more stripped down and, you know, therefore kind of more of a doom metal song. And on this album, it just turned into this more industrial death doom wall of sound situation.
And then you end off with the lyrics: "Punishment is productivity, misery is fertility," which is very, like, I could have my own interpretation of that, but I'm curious to hear how you interpret that and why you chose those kind of as the parting words on the record.
Well, the entire song kind of has this a theme of forced labor, right? And so I think, you know, thinking back on it, we're always trying to create kind of like an imagery of something. And I think the song, you know, the lyrics for the song create this image of, you know, mass production by brute force, right? There's the overseer, you know, who basically threatens, you know, people to mass produce something, or else, right? And we kind of, for some reason, we started feeling, or we found ourselves reminded of, you know, fertilizing, you know, I guess the parallels of mass production of something and maybe mass fertilization. So that's kind of how those lyrics came about. But, you know, it's like sometimes you know, it's literally us trying to go to the most I don't know how to put it, ridiculous in a way place, you know, because it just kind of enhances the story. There's not always like a super deep thought behind it, you know. Sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. And in some cases, John and I especially, we write the lyrics together. It's just always this process where we almost outdo each other in weird, oppressive, torturous imagery, right? And I think the Misery is Fertility part kind of was born out of that, where we're just kind of outdoing each other a little bit.
which is interesting though, because again, outside observer, and maybe this has also got to do with the kind of stuff I'm into outside of music, but there is almost there's almost an undercurrent of empowerment to some of that, right? Punishment is productivity. So, you know, the saying is, especially when it comes to men, you know, a man has to suffer for his personality to form properly, for him to be molded into the man he should be. Misery is fertility, you know, from very difficult situations in your life. You know, you could be driven to, you know, think about things in a different way, or think about, or you know, extreme misery could cause you to be reborn in a certain way. And I almost kind of, you know, when I read those lyrics, it felt to me like it fit in quite nicely with the music as well, because like I said to you, the record for me almost ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. Yeah, and it's the perfect way to do it, where you've been through this very torturous experience of listening to this music with this, you know, these super oppressive lyrics, and then you get to the end of it, and it's like, this is what it was all, you know, what the experience was all about. Although it sounds to me like I may be reading a little too much into that.
Well, that's cool though, because, you know, I think it's one thing. I think it's one thing to write something from your own perspective, and you know, there's always stuff that seeps into that's much more personal and that you don't necessarily want to talk about, or that doesn't, you know, it doesn't become an official theme. But, you know, like there's definitely a lot of like personal things in our lyrics as well that we then use in a creative way, I guess, and we spin stories out of that. But, you know, hearing that perspective, to me, it kind of makes perfect sense too, right? It makes perfect sense from your perspective, and it's exciting for me to hear that, you know, because it gives me an angle on something that we wrote that I hadn't considered yet, but an angle that's totally valid at the same point, right? So yeah, it's always interesting to hear what people interpret into the songs that we write, you know. But yeah, you know, when we started the band, we toyed for a while with the idea, and it keeps popping up a little bit, that, you know, that Nightmare could be a figure, you know, a figure that has a certain amount of control over a person, you know, and it has control over the person's nightmares, but also therefore control over the person's thoughts, and then it, you know, basically drives whatever protagonist of a piece of lyrics, you know, drives this person to a certain amount of madness, right? And so we keep coming back to that a little bit too, where it's just exciting to play with that idea. But we're not consequential about it. It's not necessarily, you know, the big theme of our lyrics or whatever. And, you know, like the lyrics for Brutalist Imperator, for example, were written on the day the war in Ukraine started, right? And so on the news, everybody's talking about the nuclear threat, you know what I mean? And without thinking about it, now when you read back the lyrics, and the same goes for Hammer of Desolation, I think actually we wrote both lyrics on that day, you know, you could read that into it. You could read nuclear war into that if you wanted to, although that wasn't our mission statement whatsoever. But, you know, I think things that are going on around us, things that are going on in our personal life, things that have to do with the way we grew up, you know, do seep into all of those lyrics to a certain degree.
And I think especially when you're writing lyrics in quite an abstract way, sometimes it's a subconscious manifestation of something that you have thought about, but you're looking to express, but I think sometimes you inadvertently end up expressing it in quite a direct way. I don't know if that's maybe too much me just thinking out loud, but yeah, just thinking about how that comes out. But as I said, to me, it's just the perfect way to cap off the record, even though I did feel the record was too short. but that's because I liked it, so that's not a bad thing.
It's funny. I'm always of the opinion that I think the music that we play, it's very delicate. If you overshoot it a little bit too much, I think what you said earlier, where you start getting kind of lost in maybe a lot of the same elements. I think that's kind of a risk with music that's that extreme and demanding, And so I'm always a fan of making records shorter a little bit. I think, the absolute max for me that I would want a Nightmare record to be is 40 minutes. That's, for me, is like, I'm like, all right, I don't want to, stop. Let's end it here and just, put it out this way. That's kind of how I feel. Just because I know, even as like a, I don't know, seasoned extreme metal listener, there have been a lot of albums where I'm a big fan of the band, but I realize after 30 minutes, I'm really not present anymore. It becomes kind of like, sometimes stuff becomes background noise and I guess making people hungry for more is maybe better than wearing them out. So, yeah.
Always want to leave the audience on a high. So, last question: what's next for you guys? I made the recommendation when I reviewed the record, or when I spoke about it on the news rant later on.
Mm-hmm.
I see the ideal tour for you guys being Immolation, Ulcerate, Nightmare.
That'd be a great
Darkness tour, over the United States.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because our vocalist John grew up around the Immolation guys. He actually knows them really well. That would be a great tour. Same with Ulcerate, would be a great band to tour with. We're actually coming to Europe in November, and I think there will be a couple of dates. Yeah, I think a couple of dates Scandinavia, mainland Europe, and some dates in the UK. But I don't have the full routing yet. And that is with a band called Null. And they're an interesting band. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're kind of like, they remind me a little bit of Portal, but way more grindy. It's like as if you were putting Full of Hell and Portal in a blender. Null is kind of that. We're coming over with them for 3 weeks in November. And also trying to work something out for the US. We're, like I said, we do want to tour. We're not extremely desperate to tour a lot, but we do enjoy touring. So it's kind of the next step for us, and also writing some new material.
Well, brother, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. And the best part of doing these conversations is if you enter into the conversation, you leave a bigger fan of the band than you were coming in. So definitely the case here. And hopefully we catch up again with each other at some point down the road.
Hopefully. I appreciate your time, and thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Suffering Beyond Death is the name of the track. It's taken from the absolutely exceptional record Deformity Adrift. The band, of course, is Nightmare, and that album is available on Total Dissonance Worship. A big thank you to Simon for coming on the podcast. I had a great time talking to him, and I hope you guys had a great time listening to that. Hopefully not the last time that we will see him on Into the Necrosphere. No review this week, folks. I have to admit that I have had an absolutely hectic couple of days, but part of it was filled with recording content for the podcast, including a really fun conversation with next week's guest, the returning Katie Irizarry, who now runs Suspiria PR. She and I spoke about her decision to exit Season of Mist. We spoke a lot about the music industry. We also spoke about cats. So great conversation with her. I've got another one up my sleeve that needs to happen in the next couple of days. We'll not be able to confirm anything just yet because, as you all know, I'm a superstitious and paranoid fool. But when it does happen, I will post about it on the socials. Right now, my friends, if you drink Bud Light, the next hour is not for you. This is my weekly news rant. The Odyssey begins on metalstorm.net, the greatest metal news website of all the websites. And the first headline, Arcona premiere the video clip for Yuga Saya. It says here, to coincide with today's new full-length release, Cobb folk-stroke black metal ensemble Arcona present an official music video for the Yuga Saya single. Check it out. I did like the previous single very much. I have not yet listened to Cobb in its entirety, but I am intrigued enough to hear what this single sounds like. Well, they're certainly taking their time to get started, but I have to say I quite like that soundscape intro. The music reminds me a little bit of the music used in the Mass Effect video games, for those of you guys that know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you play video games at all, then I certainly suggest you check out the Mass Effect trilogy. It dates back many years, but it is still absolutely fantastic, and especially this remastered version of it that they've done is super cool. But yeah, like I said, I like the atmosphere that's set here. It feels very sophisticated is maybe the word I'm looking for here. You know, a lot of bands do the classic intro, the ambient intro, and you know, some of them pull it off extremely well. Some of them, you know, it just sounds a bit JV, junior varsity. But this does not sound like that at all. This is all balls. So let's get back to it. if you were sitting there thinking, man, I bet Jackie's going to fucking hate this, you'd be wrong. I don't actually hate it at all. It's not top-notch worthy, but I don't mind it at all. It's got a bit of a, once the music starts, it's got a bit of a Depeche Mode kind of vibe to it. And I think that woman singing isn't bad at all. Is it blowing my socks off completely? No. I must be honest, after the intro, I was kind of expecting a little bit more impact. And I do recall the first single that we listened to, had a bit more, a little bit more beef to it. But like I said, I don't mind this. The song is 9 minutes 56 seconds long. So let's jump to to the 5.5 minute mark, because I'm curious to hear where the song goes to. So final verdict, am I going to run out to listen to Cobb? No. Do I think it's complete trash? No. Do I hate it? No. I think it's all right. I think it's a good 7 out of 10 is what I would give it. The bit that I listen to. The woman who's singing, when it comes to female extreme vocalists, she could take lessons from Belinda, from Johnny the Boy. Very cool to see how people are getting into that record, by the way, because I honestly think that people are both sleeping on that band and just sleeping or certainly sleeping on the album. I think it's very, very cool. But anyways, that's just me, and obviously it should be all of you guys too. So next up we've got TAAKE, who have put out Et Ilhure of Enknev. That's the name of their new single. Again, apologies to everyone in Norway. I know I have just butchered your native tongue. They've got the embedded single Year, and if that is the album cover, I've got to say, like, for those of you guys that are not watching this on YouTube, it's basically a very, very bad photo of an eye and a hand held in front of it. It's like they went out of their way to take as little trouble with the album cover as they possibly could. And I don't really like that very much. I feel like if you neglect things like the album cover, it's a bit like neglecting the sequencing of the record. I just feel like there's not enough love put into it. It's you kind of the impression it leaves with me, the outside observer, is that maybe you're doing something just for the sake of doing it, because there's not much else you can do. But let's not judge the book by its cover, no matter how dull the cover looks. And let's hear what the music sounds like. Got to tell you, folks, that first minute sounds to me like a very poor demo. It sounds like something a 14-year-old would be coming up with in their bedroom and recording by themselves. The production is terrible. The riff, it sounds so bad, it's truly cringeworthy. There's just nothing there. There's no impact. There's no aggression. I mean, you compare that to stuff that they were doing on Norrex Vapen, on like peak TAAKE. This is a disgrace. So I truly hope it gets a lot better than it is right now. But so far, this is fucking dog shit. So it gets substantially better when he starts doing his vocals. I think the melody sounds, a bit more striking. I think his vocals don't sound bad. Certainly doesn't sound like him at his best. It gets a lot better, but I mean, then we kind of revert straight back to that garbage riff that they started off the song with. And as I said, to me, that just doesn't cut the mustard at all. Let's go. I mean, I just for the sake of comparison, let me play you guys one of the what I would deem the classics on or in the TAAKE back catalog. So this is probably the quintessential TAAKE song, certainly their most popular song. It's the Nordbundet music video that you're about to see off their album Necrosphere that came out in 2011. But I mean, just listen to the difference between this and what we just heard. When that is the benchmark that you have set, then I'm sorry, but this fucking shite does not cut the mustard. It's not up to snuff. I mean, they were going to be going on tour with Eclipse in Australia. It's just as well that didn't happen. Because could you imagine having to follow Eclipse playing this sort of garbage? I almost feel sorry for them. Anyway, let's move on. Resin Tomb have inked a deal with Transcending Obscurity Records. It says here, Transcending Obscurity Records are thrilled to report that Australian sludgy dissonant death metal band Resin Tomb are now part of their roster and are all set to release their debut full-length offering Cerebral Purgatory later this year. Congratulations to the Resin Tomb folk, and it's so cool to see Transcending Obscurity Records go from strength to strength. Were I the folk in charge there, I would also say keep even, or pay even closer attention to the Australian underground scene, because there are some fucking killer bands there, including Christbane, who I played you guys a couple of weeks ago. Just nasty, raw, kind of crust punk type black metal genius stuff. Destroyer 666 to release anniversary compilation. Metal Twitter, or at least 40% of Metal Twitter, clutches their pearls and screams in anguish. Destroyer 666, it says here, will be celebrating their upcoming 30th anniversary by bulking up their body of work with the release of a new compilation entitled To the Devil He's Due. It will include 4 long out-of-print 7-inch EPs from 1998 to 2010. Artwork created by Chris Hades. Official release date August the 25th, 2023. I really liked the last Destroyer 666 album. I pretty much like most of what they've done. So, yeah, very cool stuff there. Suffering Hour have announced some rather shitty news. So some of you guys may have seen this. But the news is that Suffering Hours drummer has been diagnosed with cancer. American black death metal bringers Suffering Hour shared news that their drummer Jason has been diagnosed with stage 3 classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. There is a link to a GoFundMe. I'm going to post the link in the description to the podcast as well for those of you that would like to contribute to help his family with lost income and treatment. It says here, any and all donations will be greatly appreciated as we gear up to be at Jay's side to help him take this cancer down. I have mentioned this before on the podcast, but my friend James had Hodgkin's lymphoma many years ago. It's an absolutely devastating disease. He is a complete warrior and managed to kick the disease's ass, but it was a long and very, very tough fight. So my best and most positive vibes go out to Jason and to his family. And like I said, I'm going to post the link to the band, or not to their Bandcamp, to their GoFundMe in the description to the podcast. If you do have a few ducats to spare, do make sure that you go and help them out. Rivers of Nile launch a new single. I'm going to give this a listen, even though, as far as I'm concerned, this band started off so well and then somehow decided we're going to completely and utterly flush the greatness that we were capable of down the toilet and release bullshit records like The Work, which was that fucking atrocious piece of nonsense they released previously. It says here, in March, Rivers of Nile wrapped up a recording session that saw the now 4-piece band birth a considerable amount of new music featuring their previous bassist, Adam Biggs, as well as a new lead vocalist. He was, or is, the new lead vocalist. This recording session also marked the first appearance of new guitarist Andy Thomas of Black Crown Initiate. These new singles are the first to showcase the band's new lineup in full-on collaboration. Check out the first one, the Suborbital Blues, with accompanying music video. No idea what the Suborbital Blues are. I'm assuming it's when your hi-fi's subwoofer gives up the ghost, but let's hear what it's about. Complete and utter shite. There's no other way to describe that. I would rather sit in the company of AOC for an hour than listen to this fucking complete nonsense. If you want to hear Rivers of Nile make good music, then go check out the record they put out in 2015 called Monarchy. That is excellent. I mean, it's flawless modern death metal, unlike the complete and utter twaddle that we just listened to. So, the definite 2 thumbs down on that one. Okay, what have we got next, folks? Alice Cooper discloses details of his upcoming record. Don't care. Werewolves have debuted a new single. Once again, I have heard this album. It is extremely good, but some of you may not have heard the new single, so let's give it a quick spin. It says here, to taste another new piece of the Werewolves' next full-length offering, My Enemies Look and Sound Like Me, you can check out a lyric video for the title track. The new album drops on August the 11th on Prosthetic Records. I'm hopefully going to have Dave Haley come on the podcast to, I would say talk about the record, but Matt and I have kind of already done that. But it's been a long time since I've caught up with Dave, and he is, as you all know, one of my favorite drummers on the planet. He's also a hell of a guy, so it'll be good to have him back on the podcast. But in the meantime, I'm going to shut the fuck up, and let's hear what the song sounds like.
Show me a silly man, I will kill him. Fire.
Poseurs, aka Rivers of Nile. Take note, that's what death metal should sound like. Great stuff. A bit more old school, I think, in terms of the riff writing on this record. But there are a couple, I mean, both of the singles they've released so far have been, pretty speedy. Yeah, there are a couple of slower burn songs on the album as well, which are fantastic. And to me, when they do tracks like that, that's where the band really comes into their own. Like, my view is the best song they've ever written is Harvest of the Skulls, and followed very closely by I Hate Therefore I Am. But yeah, superb stuff. Not going to listen to much more of it. You can go check it out if you've not done so already. But like I said, I'm hoping to get Dave Haley on the podcast nearer the release of that record, so we can catch up and chop it up as we did a couple of, probably now about 100 episodes ago. Okay, UNBLESSED DIVINE have shared a video clip for a new song. Now, folks who are really long-time followers of the podcast will know I have known Lee Wollenschlager of UNBLESSED DIVINE for much more than half my life. I met him when I was 12 years old, and we became fast friends. He was the vocalist for Malevolent Creation. He then exited that band, and he's joined up with a former member of Sinister and a couple of other folk to put together a band that is pretty different, but I think will have enough for fans of death metal, but possibly have something to offer folks that might be into more black metal or industrial as well. So it says here, UNBLESSED DIVINE, a death metal band featuring ex-Sinister and ex-Malevolent Creation members, among others, have launched a music video for the Book of Lies single. The latter serves as a first taste of their upcoming debut record, Portal to Darkness, due out on August the 18th, 2023 via Massacre Records. I'm going to give you guys a whiff of it right now. As a matter of fact, I am going to skip forward a little bit because there's a bit of an intro on the video that if you are listening to rather than watching this, it may potentially be a little dull. So I'm going to skip past the intro, and this should hopefully we should hopefully be at the business end of things right about now. For me, this blends, this is a really good mix of Morbid Angel and the Amenta. You've got kind of the keyboard stuff going on there. You've got a bit of the industrial harshness coming in there as well, and then you've got the very traditional death metal riffing. That I've known Lee, as I said, for a long time. I know the style of music he writes. It's absolutely his signature style of play, his signature style of writing. I think it's very good. I'm probably a little bit partial, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. So if you're watching this on YouTube, drop me a note in the comments, or drop me a line on the socials and tell me what you think. But I think it's very cool, and I'm delighted for them that they got signed to Massacre Records, and certainly delighted that Lee has found his feet after Malevolent Creation. I'll give you guys another 60 seconds or so.
Taking the soul in a circle of pain.
I'm a big fan of that groovy bit there, and on the first time that they did it, the echo on Lee's voice, you know, when he does the oh, you guys know I love me a random voice noise. But yeah, good stuff there. Also, I think cool what they did with the music video, because Lee's still based out of South Africa, and I think Michal, I believe is the guitarist. I mean, he's based out of Poland. So, you know, you got folks based all over the world, and they managed to create something that I think looks pretty cool as well. So we'll see what you guys think when the full length comes out. Again, something I've already heard, and I do like it, but I would feel remiss if I didn't say that I was a bit partial to it. Okay, let's move on, my friends. We have got a song by a band called The Hirsch Effect. I've never heard of them. They are, according to the direct, and I'm not, I'm not misreading this. They're called Matchcore, according to the article here. Matchcore prog metal operatives, The Hirsch Effect, have recently launched a brand new single, Urean. It's available via available for listening via YouTube Player with lyrics below, as well as the Bandcamp widget. Check it out. Am I a big mathcore fan? No, but let's give it a listen anyway. I have to say I'm a bit disappointed, because I was ready to make a joke about how this sounds like a load of Urean, but it's actually not bad. It's got a very weird looking cover, kind of like halfway between some sort of goat jester, weird person covered in plastic. But anyways, let's that aside, the music's not bad. Pretty cool production. I like the sound on the guitars. And I like the fact that they're not just, I mean, I don't know what the mathcore nerds call it, spazzing out or what the fuck, but I like that they've got some groove going there as well. You got to have groove. Even when it comes to death metal, it's, blasting and stuff like that, I still need my breakdowns. I still need my groove. Without that, to me, there's very little to anchor a song, at least in my mind. Let's get back to it. Were I advising the Hirsch Effect, I would maybe have said you want to replace that AI child's choir that you use to do the clean singing there with something that's a bit more robust. Like you can imagine that a clean voice, maybe of the Mike Patton variety, or in the Mike Patton mold, would have sounded pretty cool there. Because I'm as much as I hate on it from time to time on this segment, I don't mind clean singing at all, actually. If it's done well, it's fantastic. It's a bit of a damp squib on an otherwise interesting, good song. opinion is confirmed. I think it's not bad. I think it could have been a whole lot better had they not had that fucking terrible clean singing in it. And I don't know how they came up with that, but it really does sound atrocious. SNORLAX have debuted a new track. I'm laughing because the name SNORLAX sounds like some sort of medication to help you stop snoring. It says here, 10 days prior to the release of their debut record, the Necrosphere Abyss, Australian death metal one-man band SNORLAX stream another new music in preview, Reawakened. That's probably one of the side effects of taking SNORLAX is you'll reawaken without having died in your sleep of a heart attack. But it does say Australian death metal, Australian instant listen. So let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, I would like to formally apologize for my flippant, some would say disrespectful comments about the name SNORLAX. I take it all back. SNORLAX is a great name for what is, by the sounds of things, a fucking great band. That is top-notch, top-tier death metal. That sounds fucking awesome. It's right up my street. Great dark vibe, a smattering of black metal going into, some really brutal shit. Good production. Love the vocals. Every single thing about that just clicks as far as I'm concerned. The best part of this song is that I don't want to stop listening. Like, I know normally I only give it like a minute and then maybe a second minute if I'm interested. The song is only 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I could pretty much go through the whole thing. And as a matter of fact, considering it's my segment, I think that's what we're going to do. This is fucking sensational. I only have one criticism to level here, really, and that is that this grim-looking gentleman from SNORLAX needs to assemble him a band, and he needs to take this shit out on the road. This is too good to position as a one-man band. This is really sensational. 12 out of 10. One of the things I particularly loved is as we kind of got into that final sequence, the slow kind of chugging breakdown, you hear that rumble of the bass underneath, and I just fucking love it. It makes this, it sounds so much heavier, so much more sinister. Really, really, really great job. And once again, my unadulterated apology for the mean things that I said about the name SNORLAX. Okay, next up, Horrendous have released Cult of Shad Ohau. I'm sure, again, I mispronounced that, but anyways, it says here, progressive death metal masters Horrendous are sharing the second advanced single, Cult of Shad Ohau, of their upcoming album Ontological Mysterium. The latter will see the light of day on August the 18th via Season of Mist. Guillermo Henriquez, who may or may not be a member of Guerrilla, did the music video for them. He has been on a complete and utter tear as far as music videos are concerned, because he also did the one for Johnny the Boy. He's done some really, really fine work recently. I have not listened to this new Horrendous single yet, so we're about to find out what it sounds like. All right, well, two things. One, we've cleared up the pronunciation. It's Cult of Shadowa. Secondly, I bet all of you guys were expecting a blast beat as soon as the opening vocal occurred there. I got to say, much like progressive politics, I'm not the biggest fan of progressive death metal, but I am not hating this at all. I think this sounds rather good, as a matter of fact. Good riffing, good vocals. The music video is a bit, or feels more like a lyric video. I don't know why it's kind of, I mean, I guess it says video made by Guillermo Henriquez. And is that, now I'm starting to second guess myself, is that the Guillermo Henriquez who's done the other videos of late? I'm going to have to look into that. Anyway, who gives a shit? Let's get back to the song. Instant elevation of the song. I love when people do different vocals like that, and I especially love those kind of weird, out of control screams. You know, it's like when Jason from Akrokaka does, you know, those shouts and screams. It takes a great death metal song or a great black metal song just to a different level. If it was done right, and it is done very right on that sequence over there. Another thing I don't often comment on is solos, and that is a fucking good solo. I also like that fretless bass I hear underneath the din of the guitars. I think all of this is very, very, very good indeed. Very much looking forward to hearing the rest of that record. All right, let's see what else we've got. BLUT AUS NORD. Much excitement about this all over my socials. And certainly a lot of excitement in my heart as well, because as you all know, I'm a rather big fan of BLUT AUS NORD. It says here, black metal entity BLUT AUS NORD are unveiling The Endless Multitude, a first excerpt from their forthcoming studio album Disharmonium Nahab. The latter sees its official release on August the 25th, 2023. Without further ado, my friends, let me hit play. This really ramps up the nightmarish feeling of the previous record to me quite substantially, actually. I mean, it's got it's taking the dissonance to a whole new level. I do like the fact that even though they're using that same vocal style, which really isn't a vocal style, it's just a bunch of howls and growls and screams and groans in the background, it is a little bit louder. It's a bit more pronounced. I think one of the things that if I had to level a criticism at the previous record, it sometimes felt like an instrumental album because of the fact that the vocals are so deeply buried. And I get the reason for doing that. He wants the vocals to feel like, I guess like an apparition. But I also like it that it's just in the mix. It's just a little bit louder this time around. Is it grabbing me as much as the first single of the previous record? That song was called That Cannot Be Dreamed. No. But I think that's also because That Cannot Be Dreamed has got a riff that is as infectious as a case of crabs. I mean, it's just a song that just bores its way into your brain and just sticks there. I mean, it's sensational. We may even have to listen to it straight after this. But yeah, I'm liking this very, very much. It really feels like if the theme is nightmares, then this is kind of, if you thought the previous record was a bad dream, this is fucking off the rails. Yeah, so my verdict of the first 2 minutes, like it very much, looking forward to hearing the rest of the record, not nearly as blown away as I was with That Cannot Be Dreamed, and just to make the point, we're going to give that song a quick listen as well. A lot of the same themes as that previous song that we heard, but just executed a little bit better, in my opinion. I think the melody. I mean, there's tons of dissonance here as well, but there's still something that makes sense. I mean, musically, this is just complete chaos, and it's cool chaos. Don't get me wrong, I like it, but as I said, there's just something about that song and, frankly, that previous album that I think is just sensational. But I mean, I think it's cool that BLUT AUS NORD are being super productive as far as releasing new music is concerned. So, very excited about hearing the rest of this. Okay, let's do one more, and then let's head over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. This is a good one. Sepulchral Curse revealed title and cover art of their second full-length. It says here, Finnish blackened death metal band Sepulchral Curse are set to unleash their new full-length album titled Abhorrent Dimensions via Transcending Obscurity Records. Check out the album's cover artwork created by Erskine Designs, as well as the first advanced track called Among the Wretched Columns. If memory serves me correctly, I'm going to verify this while we listen to the song, but I think that we may have showcased Sepulchral Curse on this podcast. Not with anybody from the band, being interviewed or anything like that, but I may have had them. I either have reviewed this or something to that effect. I'm gonna verify that while we listen to this track, but yeah, what I remember about the previous record is that I liked it. So, for what it's worth, let's hear if I will like Among the Wretched Columns. That is pretty good, but I would say that band that we listened to from Australia is SNORLAX. One man tops the efforts of all five of the men in Sepulchral Curse, at least for my money. I think this is led down somewhat by those vocals. I think they just sound to me to be very faceless and very, very generic. There's nothing that's screaming out at me about the vocals and frankly, actually, the song as well. Whilst that was playing, I did want to address something straight after this, but I can't recall what the band is or who the band is. But Sheriff Mike Scandato of Necromaniacs pointed out a song that I played on the news rant, and he dropped me a note about it as well. I think maybe I can find the message on Facebook, and that'll give me the answer as to who we're talking about. But he pointed out quite rightly, and I actually didn't quite hear it at the time, but now that I've heard it, I cannot unhear it. But he said that the vocalist of this particular band sounds like Eric Cartman, and I think he is absolutely 100% spot on correct. And like I said, now that I've heard it, I cannot unhear it. So bear with me 10 seconds. There we go. You may hear it crack up or pop up on my phone. Okay. Now, I've got the band. Let me play this to you guys very quickly, and then you guys tell me in the comments whether you can hear Eric Hartman, because like I said, as soon as the sheriff pointed it out, I was like, oh my god, you are so spot on with this. Now it sounds so much worse. I mean, again, a band where we listened to this on the news rant. I remember saying specifically, riffs sound great, vocals not great. But yeah, let me give this a quick spin so you can hear what I'm talking about.
An erratic overture.
I mean, we almost don't even have to hear the rest. That's Eric Hartman, my friends. There's no getting away from it. Once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. And for proof, let's find a classic Eric Hartman scene, and you'll hear what the sheriff has been referring to. I am going to normalize that, by the way, that it is now Sheriff Mike Scandado.
Yes, officer?
Clocked you at 40 miles an hour back there. Do you know what the speed limit is, y'all?
Well, according to that sign right there, it's 40 miles an hour.
Step out of the car, please, sir.
Wait a second. Aren't you Stan's little friend?
Sir, step out of the car, please.
Yeah, you're the one who always plugs up the toilet at our house.
I am a cop, and you will respect my authority.
So yes, the vocalist of Dark Age of Ruin, short of saying "you'll respect my authority," is Eric Hartman. Anyway, let's move on to Blabbermouth. Right, what pearls of wisdom do we have here? It says Corey Taylor says original Slipknot frontman Anders Kolsefny will crush, singing "Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat." I saw that Slip Poo released a surprise EP the other day. I can't imagine how fucking dreadful that would sound. Next up, we've got Max and Igor Cavalera sharing a re-recorded version of Sepultura's Bestial Devastation. The reviews or the response on this news rant was mixed for the last re-recording effort, but let's hear if this is any better. Got to tell you, I think that's working a lot better than the Morbid Visions re-recording. The Morbid Visions re-recording sounded a little bit sterile to me, and it sounded a bit characterless. And when we compared it to the previous or the original version, like the original version just kind of seemed to have a charm to it that I liked a little bit more. But this, I think, is pretty damn good. And it's maybe just because of the the actual song, the actual music, I mean, they recorded this all together, so they certainly didn't, learn lessons from having done Morbid Visions and then apply that to Bestial Civilization. But like I said, I think this is good. I'm not hating this at all.
With blood, axis of hate, the beast of son of evil, torment the preachers of Christ.
I suddenly find myself a lot more excited about this, I've got to say. Max sounds fantastic, better than I've heard him sound for a long time. Igor is fantastic, so, I mean, he can't sound anything other than great when he drums. But I like that very, very much, and like I said, I am now very much looking forward to it. That's coming out on July 14th, so we will review it on the podcast then. Fantastic news. High on Fire have completed work on their 9th studio album. It says here, High on Fire is celebrating its 25th anniversary in 2023 with a special slate of rejoiceful revelry. The Grammy Award-winning group featuring bassist Jeff Matz, guitarist vocalist Matt Pike, and new drummer Cody Williams, formerly of Big Business, The Melvins, and Murder City Devils, will bookend the Jubilee with a reissue of its long out-of-print debut, The Art of Self-Defense, and the release of its as yet untitled new album set to drop in early 2024. Fuck. That's a long time to wait. But The Art of Self-Defense is a very good album. If you've not listened to it recently, worth revisiting. Worth revisiting the High on Fire back catalogue multiple times over the course of a week, as far as I'm concerned. You guys all know I'm a huge fan of Matt Pike as a musician, as a vocalist. I absolutely love him. I fucking love this band. And I really like Cody. Sorry, did I call him Cody Williams? It's Cody Willis. Cody Willis of Big Business. I like Big Business as well. They got a tune called Lonely Lyle, which is just absolutely incredible. Okay, next up we've got Billy Corgan recalling telling Pantera to shut the fuck up about Metallica. That is not a fight that I think is has an uncertain outcome, my friends. Billy Corgan versus Phil Anselmo. I would say even Phil Anselmo, when he was strung out and had back aches, would probably beat the tar out of Smashing Pumpkins. But it says here, Billy Corgan of brutal death metal band Smashing Pumpkins recently appeared on Sirius XM's Metal Ambassador podcast, hosted by Jesse Mangan, or Mangan, or whatever the fuck. During the interview, Corgan shared a previously unheard story about Pantera. He said, "Let me tell you a story since we're talking Pantera." So they were having a big moment, obviously, during those first 3 major label albums, and I was backstage with them one day, and one of those mid-90s Metallica albums might have been Reload or something. Metallica had come out. There was a lot of controversy about where Metallica was trying to go and what happened to Metallica, and are they still metal and they're wearing makeup now or whatever. So he's talking about Load rather than Reload there. Because I don't think that they had the makeup photos for Reload, if I'm not mistaken. They just had the shitty album cover. Even managed to somehow make it even shittier than Load's. And the Pantera guys were just going on and on about Metallica. Not in a negative way, more like a confused, like, I love Metallica, but I don't get it, and they're not metal, and what's going on. And I literally said, and this is a true story, I don't think I've ever told the story in public. I raised my hands. I knew them well enough that they would sort of listen to me. I mean, that's saying something, and I would say, you know what, shut the fuck up. And they looked at me like, did you just tell us to shut the fuck up? And I said, shut the fuck up. Okay, so the room goes silent, and I go, listen, set aside Metallica for a second. Okay, so the room goes silent, and I go, you guys right now are the best metal band on the fucking planet, okay? Shut the fuck up, worry about Pantera, just worry about Pantera. Metallica will work it out. And they did, right? And I said, you just focus on Pantera, which was my very poor impression of Billy Corgan's singing voice. You just focus on being the greatest metal band on the fucking planet. And they all looked at each other like, they were like, oh, okay, he's complimenting us. And then it was like, okay, drink this horrible poison, you fucking alternative weirdo. I suspect what he didn't add in there is he was possibly backtracking after telling them to shut the fuck up, because he knew that he was about to be thrown an epic beating. But he does make a good point. Pantera focused on Pantera, and, they did a fantastic job. As I Lay Crying is mixing their new album, hurrah. Agnostic Front's Vinny Stigma, I'm Not Gonna Retire. New York hardcore legend Vinny Stigma of Agnostic Front was asked in a new interview with Grass Pop Metal Meeting if he ever thinks about slowing down or possibly even retiring from performing in the not-too-distant future. The 67-year-old guitarist responded, I'm not gonna retire. I'm going to do this for as long as I can. My health, my spiritual and my mental health is great. Well, I don't know about my mental health, but yeah, I'm great. I'm doing great. I'm in good shape. I'm ready to play a fucking show right now. That dude is a absolute legend, and as much as it's probably very unlikely that I will ever have him on the podcast, I would love to speak to that guy on the show. I met him once. Very intense cat. Crazy to think that he's 67 years old, man. Because when you see him on stage, he still has a fucking heap of energy. I do not imagine a 67-year-old in my family circles or, folks that I know who are 67 who'd be able to carry on the way that he does. And more power to him, because, Agnostic Front still continue to make music that's pretty good as well. So I hope that he continues for as long as he wants to. I think that's fucking awesome. It gives me hope for when I get old. Ex-Typo Negative guitarist wants Axl Rose to sing at hypothetical Peter Steele tribute concert. Possibly one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life, and I really like Kenny Hickey, but it says here, in a new interview with Scott Penfold of Loaded Radio, ex-Typo Negative guitarist Kenny Hickey was asked if he's surprised by the enduring popularity of his former band more than 13 years after the passing of Typo frontman Peter Steele. He responded, yeah, it's surprising, and I'm very grateful for it. I mean, the band has transcended, which is amazing. It's reached a whole new generation. We're doing better than we were before Pete passed, which is actually true and very ironic, I think. Sad irony. But it says there's a whole resurgence on it, which is good. It's a testament to the work we put into it and the honesty we put into it and the years of sweat. There was realism to the music. 100% agree. Hickey also talked about the possibility of him and the other surviving members of Typo Negative staging a Peter Steele tribute concert with various guest musicians. He said, people have approached us to try and reform the band with a singer and go on the road because everybody wants a money grab. We personally don't think Peter is replaceable by anybody. Why 1000% concur on that. And it just wouldn't work. He continued, a tribute I'd love to do. I'm sure Johnny Kelly would love to do it. I know Josh wouldn't do it because Josh is picking up body parts in East New York. He's not going to stop that to start rehearsing, but yeah, we would do it with guest musicians and stuff. When Penfold noted that Kelly previously picked Hartz and Wilson as a singer, he would like to tackle Steele's parts during a hypothetical tribute concert. Hickey said Ann Wilson would be great, but she probably never heard of us. As for whom he would choose to sing at such an event, Kenny said Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses. He had that would be very cool to hear Axl sing a song like Typo's Love You to Death. It would be interesting. And actually, maybe the spirit that he's coming at this from is that Pete is irreplaceable. So rather than have somebody who tries to sound like Pete or even has a voice like Pete, which not many have, but again, you can have somebody that maybe has that kind of deep bassy vocal style. Maybe instead of that you have someone that just sounds completely and utterly different, and is singing the song's tribute style. But Axl just doesn't have the pipes anymore. He sounds better on some of the recent clips that I've heard, but he also still sounds an awful lot like the old pervert on Family Guys when I hear him sing, especially when he does the higher stuff. So I'm just trying to think. I'm racking my brain here as to who could be a good singer to stand in on a Typo Negative tribute show. I honestly couldn't imagine who would be able to do it. You'd say maybe someone like Nick Holmes, but that wouldn't work. I don't know. I'm going to have to mull that one over. All right. Let's do one or two more, and then we'll hit the bricks. D. Snyder on why he sold his catalog. It's math. I'm very curious as to how much money he made out of the Twisted Shitster catalog. It says here, during an appearance on the New Theory podcast, Dee Snider spoke about his decision to sell his Snider's music publishing catalog of 69 songs, including the classic Twisted Sister rock anthems We're Not Gonna Take It and I Want to Rock to Universal Music Publishing Group in 2015. So just as an aside, you know, he kicked off massively about people using the song and like Trump using it, you know, at rallies, and said I absolutely didn't give my permission for him to use it. Is he not in a position where he can actually give anyone his permission to use the song? He sold the rights to the song. So, I mean, unless it's a, you know, token show of, or a token permission, I mean, really, anyone who pays UMPG can use it if they want to. So anyway, that's just a random thought. The songs on the catalogue have been featured in numerous national commercials, films, television, and the Broadway musical Rock of Ages, which had a 3-year residency at the Venetian and then a 1-year residency at the Rio All Suite Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Yawn. I wanna see what the scratch was that he made on those songs, but I can't see it anyway. What I can see here is that he did a cover of O Come All Ye Faithful, which to me, again, makes him one of the biggest and most festering penises alive. Because the song is fucking atrocious, and, I mean, he's a wanker, let's be honest. Queens of the Stone Age share a lyric video for Carnivore. The part of the reason I haven't really reviewed a record this week is because there's not really anything that's come out that has been able to take me away from how fucking great the new Queens of the Stone Age is. I love that album and I love that band. Folks, I think we are done with the news rant for this week. And so we come to the end of another epic installment of Into the Necrosphere. I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed that. Next week, I am back with Katie Irizarry of Suspiria PR. And a massive thank you to Simon for his time. Hope you guys check out Nightmare. Make sure you check out Avertia. And make sure you get your asses back here next week. I'm going to play out with one of the very best tracks that Marduk ever recorded, a tune called Cold Mouth Prayer. In the meantime, whatever it is you're doing, wherever it is you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.
To the possible